Yes.
This is the reading for Chapter 11 for Capone. Al Capone does my shirts. The best in the country. Same day, still Monday, January 7th, 1935. When my dad tells my mom she seems to have no reaction. That's one of the answers. No reaction. She goes in her room, puts on her regular clothes, and comes out with her purse, her gloves in her hand. Let's go, she says, her face blank, her eyes dead. Sit down, honey, my father says. We don't have to go right this minute. Let's just take a deep breath here. Now, my mother says, waiting like a child at the door. My father's shoulders are hunched. He gets his shoes, jacket, and hat and starts to open the door. No, my mother says, you can't go. You have to be at work at 8. That's another answer. He can't go because he has to be at work. I'll go myself. You can't go by yourself. Yes, my mom shoves my dad hard. His arm bangs the wall. My mouth falls open. I've never seen her do anything like this. Moose, my father asks, his voice quiet, will you go with your mother? So now they're on the boat. My mom seems better. Her eyes are angry now, not dead. Here we go again, I think. Before the Esther P. Marinoff, the Behrman School was it. And before that, the heat treatments. And before that, the aluminum foil formula. And before that, UCLA. So this was not her first school. They've tried many schools for her. At UCLA, they made us cut Natalie's hair, shave it right off. They tested her like she was some kind of insect. They tested the movement of her eyes, the sensitivity of her ears, the color of her pee. They tested allergies, reflexes, muscle strength, her speech in a dark room, her reaction to Tchaikovsky. That's a classical musician. The way she ate, slept, burped, blew her nose, and even what she thought, especially what she thought, nothing about her was private. At home, she'd spend hours in her room rocking like a boat in a terrible storm. She was so stressed out. But it was UCLA. My mother would remind us, when she said the name, it had a golden glow. They had promised us a cure, if a word my mother can't even seem to hear. Natalie's problem fit the diagnosis they were studying. So I spent months riding in the rumble seat of my Graham's car to and from Westwood, and hours sitting in the waiting room until the day they let us know their findings. An interesting case, they said, but not what we're looking for. You should consider donating her brain to science when she dies. When she dies, my mother said, she's 10 years old. They shrugged their shoulders and handed my dad a bill. Things fell apart at my house after that. So I don't know if it's Dad's bill, if the money that all this stuff cost, if it's Mom's sadness, but things fell apart. Ants in the sink, flies on the garbage, cereal for supper, no clean dishes, Natalie in the same dirty dress, the blood of picked scabs on her arms. It was months before my mother left the house again, and it was with my mom's sisters, my Gram and Grandpa, her friends, and cousins all around. So maybe Mom had some depression or some sadness or some anxiety of her own, that she couldn't take care of the house jobs that she was once doing. I don't remember when my mom decided Natalie was going to stay 10, but I think it might have been then. Sitting in Mr. Purdy's office, I imagine punching him in the nose. My arm twitches just thinking about it. I'm afraid, Mr. Purdy explains when he comes in, she's more involved than we can handle right now. We're equipped for boys with this kind of challenge, and your daughter faces, but not girls. You might want to look into Durham in Marin County. Mr. Purdy hands my mother a card with an address scribbled on it. Durham, my mother's voice catches. Isn't that an asylum? I don't think it's helpful to get caught up with words, Miss Flanagan. We're looking for a way to help your daughter. Let's not let words come between us. My mother takes her green feather hat off as if we're staying. The kids who graduate from school get jobs. They have lives. Some of them do get jobs, yes. That's what I want for Natalie. I understand that, Miss Flanagan, but it's not working out for her here. It's only been 2 days. Surely even a usual child would have had some adjustment to a new setting. Mr. Purdy grunts. Mr. Purdy is the kind of man who can make a grunt seem polite. My husband and I, my mom continues, have done a lot of research on this, and we believe this program, your program, is the best in the country. That's why she wants Natalie to go there. You are turning out kids who can function in the world. So her mom wants her to get a job like a usual child, and she's not considering that Natalie's not sick. She doesn't have a sickness. You can't cure her. You can't fix her. She is who she is. And mom's having a hard time accepting that. She does love her. She's still struggling with Natalie's abilities. So that's kind of you to say, but I don't think my mother is unstoppable, that we will be able to replicate your success anywhere. So I wonder if there isn't some way you can make this work. Mr. Purdy shakes his head. She can't stay here now, but if you wish, we can put you in touch with someone who might be able to help Natalie. Help her get ready, my mother offers. She sits up straighter in her chair. Mom is so hopeful. Yes, Mr. Purdy smiles. This lady hands his lady hands fingertip to fingertip. He tips them toward my mother like he's rolling a ball to her, and then he swivels in the squeaky chair to get a folder behind him. He copies a number down on a slip of paper and hands it to my mother. My mother looked at the page, then folds it closed. I bet you this lady's going to be expensive. Mr. Purdy stands up to signal the end of our meeting. I stand up too. My mother does too. Mr. Purdy, my mother does not. Mr. Purdy and I sit down. I'm proud of my mother for this, proud of her for getting all she can from this man, but I'm angry too. No matter what this little piece of paper says, my mom will do it. Once she sent away for voodoo dolls and carefully followed the instructions. Some witch doctor in the West Indies wrote about how to relieve Natalie's condition. Another time, she took Natalie to a church where everybody stood up and waved their arms. She read the Bible to her for 2 hours every day while Natalie sat there staring at her right hand as if there were a movie playing on her palm and she couldn't bear to pull herself away. And then there was a school where my mom taught music classes for free until they got Natalie in. And when they did, Natalie just sat in the fancy classroom tearing bits of paper into tiny pieces. With Natalie, there never is a happy ending, but my mom won't ever believe that. Forgive me, Mr. Purdy. I'd like to know what happened, my mom says, her brown eyes staring down. I had hoped Mr. Flanagan would be here with you. Mr. Purdy looks at me. My husband is working the evening shift. Of course, Mr. Purdy nods. He looks around his clustered office as if he's searching for a way out. Natalie is, I would say, unresponsive. He peeks at my mother to see if this will do. My mother doesn't blink. That's not a good answer. I'm afraid there was a bit of a skirmish over a box of buttons and some unfortunate behavior. Your daughter is 10, you said, Mrs. Flanagan. She's not, remember? Mr. Purdy's watery eyes are suddenly sharply focused on my mom. Yes, my mother says, her white-gloved fingers closed into a tight fist around the handle of her green pocketbook. She gets up early. She likes to watch the sunrise, I say. Mr. Purdy looks at me, then back at my mom. As you can see, we are located in Presidio Heights. It's a fine residential neighborhood, but perhaps not an ideal spot for someone like your daughter. His voice trails off. My mother waits. And though our neighbors are largely encouraging of what we're trying to do here, we must be cautious about taking children who might strain the relationship we've worked so hard to build. Children who are, one might say, overly vocal. She screamed, my mother asked. I'm reading. Yes, she did, for the better part of an hour, I'm afraid. Your daughter's voice is quite shrill, so high-pitched, and coupled with her early rising habits. But you think this is something that my mother holds up for the folded slip of paper. Miss Kelly can help with you. Can't interrupt. Hold on 1 minute. Indeed, I do. Mr. Purdy says, standing up again. He has his goodbye smile on, and he's looking at his watch. And why is this different for boys, she asks. The boys' cottage is located in the old maid's quarters, which is farther from the neighbors. Mr. Purdy sits down again. He sketches a quick map for us. It looks like a bad pirate's map with X's marked for the treasures. Did you take her buttons away, I asked. My mom looks at me, then back at Mr. Purdy. We can't have a child who screams like a banshee at 5:15 in the morning in a neighborhood like this. Now, if you'd like to spend some time working with Miss Kelly, there's a good possibility she can help Natalie bring this problem under control. I can't promise you, of course, but if Miss Kelly feels that Natalie is ready for our program, we'll consider her application again in May. So he tells her that she can come back in May, which is enough to calm Mom down, to get her to leave, instead of just telling her absolutely not, she can't come back. So Mom feels hopeful again. My mother is up now, offering her hand to Mr. Purdy to shake. Of course, my husband and I appreciate all the help you've given us. In the waiting room, Natalie's legs are open, the way my mother always tells her not to sit. She is seated on a needlepoint brocade chair, and I see the way her finger is moving that she is counting the stitches on the seat. We wait until she finishes the last stitch at the bottom before she starts again at the first stitch at the top. Our timing is perfect. We had a lot of practice at this. My mother and I grabbed the old brown suitcase that says Natalie Flanagan on all 6 sides, and we hustle Natalie out the door. She is walking behind us now, a teenage girl acting as if she's 8.